Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Anime Night in the Dojo. Today's featured show, MF Ghost, Season 3.
Yep, MF Ghost, Season 3, Episode 9. Welcome back to the dojo. I'm Ryu. Sage. We're back for more Anime Night in the Dojo. And, well, last time we had a bunch of stuff going. End of Summer Fireworks Festival. We got to talk about cultural significance, that kind of thing. You know, we got to talk about a lot of stuff last time. But hey, we got the qualifying going for this next track, which, well, there's a couple obstacles in this one. We got to talk about man-made water hazards. So that's going to be interesting. But either way, Kaneda got his upgrades. Car's a whole new car. It's going to do some things. The Red Bullet, that's going to be something. I assume that's probably going to be one of Kaneda's, like, nicknames, you know, like how Takumi was the tragic rallyist, that kind of thing. So I assume this might be one of Kaneda's nicknames. But yeah, looking forward to this. Continue qualifying, and then we'll probably get the usual first lap or two of the race by the end of the season. You know what I mean? And then if the last season is truly the last season, if the next season is truly the last season, then they'll just have to finish everything in that season. Maybe it'll be like a 16 episode season or something. I don't know. But once again, if I have time, I'll start doing what I'm doing with Fire Force and just kind of like reading up to the point and be like, okay, are they going to skip something? Did they skip something? Because at this point, I've gotten pretty good at skimming through source material, just looking for possible changes or skip stuff, because I can just see it at a glance as I'm going through the pages. Like, yeah, I recognize that dialogue. I recognize that dialogue. I recognize that dialogue.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So,
because once again, even if they don't necessarily do the final race, even if like the final race isn't necessarily like even part of the story per se, like we figure it's going to be, the main thing we're basing the whole like questioning of it being the last season thing on is the fact that we're only about halfway through the source material.
Yeah, that's the only problem. We're at like chapter 150 out of like 280. So, you know what I mean?
so trying to cover like the entire other half of the source material in one season is the eyebrow raising thing.
Yeah, so best case scenario, we end on like chapter 190 to 180 to 190, and then we'd still need to do like, you know, anywhere between 70 to 90 chapters in one core, which Fire Force is doing it, but yeah. I don't know. Maybe there's something that they want to skip, or the author told them to skip and just do this and just stop the story here. I don't know, but we'll find out. But that's a later thing. That's probably it'll probably. I assume it'll probably come out early next year because source material is finished. They're clearly wanting to push this through and get it done. So they're probably already working on it. You know what I mean? So it'll probably be like an early next year thing because we've got one season of MF Ghost every year here. Hell, even last year we had two. We finished season 1 at the at the beginning of last year, and then we started the second season at the end of last year. So. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to push some buttons and get going here. So people on Patreon, as always, we'll see you on the other side of the edit for the timer reaction. And people on YouTube beyond however watching, see you on the other side for the discussion and review. And links to all the stuff that you might want to click on are down there in the description. Check it out. Watch whatever you want. So there goes some. Well, alrighty then, you guys have it. It is pretty much the paperclip course that I talked about. So that's cool. Double line. Makes sense. If I can land on the still of when they showed the entire track, I will. But for now, Kaneda is still keeping up the good luck charm. Ren loves him. Who would have guessed? But either way.
But you brought up the whole thing of like he's had it the whole time, but she doesn't know that. That
yeah,
was
she
the
doesn't
whole thing of like,
yeah.
She gave him the charm, realized, saw freaking, what's her name's charm, got all upset, and that's what led to the whole him getting injured thing.
Right, yeah. So, either way, this was another solid episode across the board. The qualifier, we talked about it during the reaction a little bit with Kaneda coming in a little bit behind Sawatari, that kind of thing. There are many different reasons for that. Kaneda could have done it on purpose because he didn't want to start in the pole. That is something that certain racers will do because they don't want the pole. And he could have just really feathered it in there to just be as close as he could to the pole position and not take it. Track conditions. Every day is different. How hot the pavement is, concrete, asphalt, whatever that terrain is. It could have been slightly colder, slightly hotter. That affects, conditions of everything. That kind of thing. Wind direction. They were showing the wind direction on Ogata's screen, that kind of thing. If there was a stronger wind at certain portions of the course, they are on the seaside. You know what I mean? There's going to be wind. So depends on what time of the day it is. There are all kinds of different things that will knock, whatever it was, 0.3 of a second off of any run. You know what I mean? So it could be any myriad of things.
0.32.
Yeah, 0.32.
It was like 0.32 seconds.
Yeah. So any of those myriad of things could be the reason why track conditions predominantly being the thing. We saw the fact that the 8.6 got the upgrades that it did get. Ogata was showing them off here. A lot of computer controlled systems, stuff like that for the suspension, doing things automatically. You know what I mean? Things that pressure control systems, stuff like that. It's all handled by this kind of system, and you can adjust it on the fly to do certain things. Your suspension doing more work will alleviate tire wear. That is something that they discussed, so that was good that they talked about that. If anybody's more interested in this kind of technology, it exists right now. You can get something like this for your tuner car if you have, like an import or whatever. You can put it on a domestic vehicle, have like a Mustang or a Camaro or Charger or whatever. You can do all this stuff. It's just like anything else, a money sink for your hobby. So if you want something like this, you can absolutely get it. If you do stuff like rallycross or, anything at maybe at your local airport, they do these courses between cones and stuff like that for amateurs and stuff like that. This kind of thing would absolutely help you with that, and it's a headache saver. It's a quality of life improvement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was cool to see that kind of thing. The other upgrades on the 8.6 that they talked about. Obviously, it's going to have more downforce with the wing. We talked about that last time. It's going to lead to more speed. It will help with the hydroplaning thing that Kaneda was talking about and whatnot. So all the upgrades, very cool. They explained that very well. And, they squashed their beef. Shun was in the booth. That was cool. They didn't really have to talk to him during the run because he had the attention flag the whole time and he was just, kind of dominating. But the one thing that we will talk about here is we got the layout of the track, more background on the track from Shun. It was cool that it always seems to be like a different character talking about the reasons for why the track has the lore that it does. And in this case, Shun was talking about what happened, it got submerged because of volcanic activity and stuff like that. So that kind of just extra little bit of regional lore. They've been doing that the whole time, and it's cool, and I'm glad they're still doing it. So good on them for that.
Yeah, once again, all the track hazards are based off of some form of actual disaster that happened. In this case, like we figured, it's flooding.
Right. So either way, we talked about this a little bit last time with, I assumed that this was going to be like a little dip. It is not, since the hazard on this track is in fact the waterfall twice, one going that way, one coming this way. The lower trap is the hydroplaning, and the trap up here is an actual jump, not just a drop off that we talked about that I speculated on, in case anybody was thinking about they lied about it. No, they just showed the vehicle landing. They showed Sawatari landing. They never showed him going off a jump. So, they just showed him landing and moving on. So it could have been a drop off, anything that we talked about, but in this case, they are jumping over the hazard in a man-made, whatever you want to call this, whatever they call these split bridges that can, lift themselves. I forget what they're called. But
Drawbridge?
Yeah, drawbridge. So this is definitely interesting. They went into that. And again, setting yourself up properly for a jump like this can have an effect on your suspension, your tires, and stuff like that. So that'll be interesting to see how that's handled during the race. Kaneda taking the far outside line is going to be beneficial because, as they showed off, the next turn was going to be a right-handed turn. So if you're more closer, trying to stay away from like the fence, like Shun said, like, oh, you know, you're kind of like spooking yourself by getting super close to the fence. You're taking yourself out of what would be the preferred line going into a right-hand turn. So, you know, that's why Kaneda was on the outside like he was. So
Yeah. It's because when you're jumping, the jump goes over the fence line, and you naturally can't see the road beneath you when you're jumping. So it ends up just being a thing of once you've jumped, you can no longer see anything going on beneath you.
Right.
So most drivers naturally
they want to give themselves
freak
enough
out.
Space. Yeah, and it's just it's kind of one of those things that, especially in this kind of situation, you're not doing this every day. You're not like a Baja 1000, you know, off-road guy that's going off jumps every, you know, like freaking quarter of a mile, you know what I mean? So it's not something that guys like this usually have to deal with. So you definitely want to be as far away from, in the case of this, since this is a freaking cliffside, you know what I mean? You don't want to be near the fence and end up in the bay, like Shun pointed out. So, but if you know physics and math and how fast you're going and where you're going to land, then you don't really have to worry about that. You just have to trust that, you know, you're going to land where you're going, because math and physics, you know what I mean? If you're going 90 kilometers per hour, you're probably not going to shoot over the fence, you know what I mean? If you're at the correct angle. So, you know, that is what it is. But, you know, they showed this off well, and at the end of the day, you know, they talked about time differential, all those kinds of things. They didn't really go into more or less what Sawatari did with his vehicle, so it'll be interesting to see if we get more on like what happened with his car, because he didn't switch cars like he said he was going to. So I'm interested to see what they do with that. But again, Kaneda coming in second, unsurprising. I figured if he doesn't get the pole, there's probably a reason. Track conditions, predominantly in a real world perspective, is the reason why he didn't pass Sawatari's time. But once again, Kaneda being Kaneda, he might have, you know, timed it. You know what I mean? In drag racing, they call it pedaling. He might have purposely lowered his track or his time on purpose to not have the pole for reasons. You know what I mean? There are definite.
Or I was gonna say, or we did see him hit the one pothole. It might be a thing of that pothole wasn't there when his in his friggin' mind palace friggin' simulating the races. But now that he knows it's there, he won't hit it in the actual race.
Yeah, it could be something like that, and that was something I made a note of, was he did hit a pothole, and Ogata and Shun were like, oh, he recovered really quickly, you know what I mean? So that doing something like that would absolutely take 3/10 off your lap time, you know what I mean? The loss of momentum, that kind of thing. So it could be something like that as well. So either way, all the racing stuff was handled great for this. We got another random factoid about MFG, and apparently you get a million yen for every overtake you make in a race. Which, again, $10,000 US, about, right? So, because Kaneda overtook 10 people in the previous race, he made 10 million yen. $100,000 just for the overtakes. Which, as Shun pointed out, usually there aren't 10 overtakes in an entire race total of all of the drivers, and he did it by himself.
Yeah.
So that's why they have like a system, like a reward system like that, where it's just like, you know, there's not a lot of overtakes, so it's just kind of like a neat bonus. So, you know, just casually $100,000. You know what I mean? So that was another like random factoid on that. But yeah, just, you know, no problem. There are performance incentives in every sport. You know what I mean? Why not serious overtakes? Obviously, you would have to pay close attention to see if people are gaming the system. You know what I mean? that kind of thing. You probably only get a payout for one overtake. So, like say if he passes Beckenbauer, he gets the 10K for that, or the million for that. Again, but then if Beckenbauer passes him and they like trade first place like 6 or 7 times over the course of the race, that they wouldn't both be getting overtakes for that. It's probably just like one overtake per, you know what I mean? Because then you'd be able to game assist.
Yeah.
Like that. But still, you know what I mean? It is still an impressive thing. But either way, well, let's talk about how Akaba is not your traditional womanizer. Since there's not really a huge amount more we can really say about this episode besides the Emma stuff that we'll get to. I wouldn't say him, just kind of, we talked about this with Fire Force stuff and procreation and needing to have sex and whatnot to further humankind or whatever species it is. It's just like, okay, so they show him like in the intro, with this guy, I forget his name, the guy in the Honda, but he's always like looking at a girl or something, or yeah, at least in this OP he's looking at a woman. It's just like, yeah, but it's not like every time we see, if Akaba was what I think of a womanizer as, he'd be hitting on a woman in every scene that we see him that isn't on the track, and that's just not true. You know what I mean? So
yeah, no, virtual a womanizer is generally someone who's like actually like constantly looking to get with women and never actually serious about any of it.
Yeah. So Akaba, he's just a normal guy. He saw a beautiful girl and shot his shot, and that was it. Is that such a big deal? No. You know what I mean? I think that's perfectly natural behavior. You know what I mean? It's not like he went into the lounge and saw 15 women and was like, hey, you want to go out with me? Hey, you want to go out with me? Hey, you want to go out with me? That's, you know what I mean? That's the difference. So.
Yeah, he's just a single guy who's still like actively flirting with freaking women.
Yeah, so I'm not a womanizer. Sorry, that's something I'm going to disagree with this. So you can't tell me he's doing something different than most other guys that are looking for a partner. Most other people, what have you.
At least not that we've seen.
Yeah, at least that we've seen in the anime. If the source material proves me wrong, that's totally fine, and I will retract this statement. From what we've seen in the anime, he's just a guy who likes women. Who cares? But either way, we got his lap. We don't know where he ended up. We got the guy in the Honda's lap, and then we got the Duchess of Delusion, Emma Green.
Yeah, we didn't get. Yeah, we didn't get the placements for any of this day.
Yeah, we did not get an update on the. We got Kanada's position. That was it. But this, I think he was day 5, and this is day 6. So.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was the previous day. We didn't get any update on this day.
Yeah. So that's kind of a bummer, but I think they're doing it on purpose, so that's totally fine. But let's talk about journalistic integrity for a second. So the MFG host guy, the play-by-play announcer, I forget his name. My bad, but I don't think they've said his name all that often. But he got all that information from Emma. Totally fine thing to do. Absolutely. It's nice to have information about a new driver, that kind of thing. I've talked about Vin Scully in the past. I think he is always going to be the gold standard for sports journalism and being a play-by-play guy and that kind of thing. So if you're into that, look up the history of Vin Scully and how he handled himself. There are plenty of other great, journalists and play-by-play guys out there in history. I just gravitate toward Vin Scully because I'm a Dodgers guy. He was the Dodgers play-by-play announcer for almost 60 years, that kind of thing. I grew up with him. He is my most respected journalist. But he went out and got this information on Emma. Got the story from Emma. Absolutely fine. All the stuff that he got on her, 100% totally fine. Nothing wrong with it. Totally cool to talk about on air. You want to have stories. You want to have unique things to talk about the drivers, the athletes, whatever, what have you. Up until the point of when it involves somebody else that you have access to. If she said she was doing this because she was in love with some guy that was here in Japan and wasn't associated with MFG and, she had the story about him and whatever, That's totally fine. If you can have access to the guy and you know whatever, then you just have to point that out, and people could probably put that together. But since he has access to Kaneda, before you put that out over the airwaves, you need to just go over to Kaneda and be like, hey, so I talked to Emma Green, and she told me all this stuff about you guys. Is this true? What do you have to say about this? You know what I mean? Before you just put that story out there that kind of makes Kaneda look like kind of an asshole. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where, in the case of that, if the person that spins the story is talking about somebody else that's in the sphere, especially another driver in this case, please go talk to the other driver.
Yeah, he should have checked in on it, but it's kind of being written off as, like Ogata was saying, just that the Japanese as a culture
they don't care about old news, tend
to put a lot less value in old news. So like a past relationship is a lot less important to them compared to your current relationship. So like, while it's obviously like a big thing of like Kanata is like a hot topic right now, so talk anything you can about him kind of thing.
Yeah.
The fact that it's an old relationship doesn't mean as much.
Right. But either way, it's still one of those things where even if it's culturally different, you still want to have both sides of the story before you could potentially make yourself look like an ass as a reporter. You know what I mean? Because that's not checking your sources and doing your due diligence and fact checking stuff. You know what I mean? The rest of it, like that she went to Fujiwara school and did all that stuff, totally fine. Completely just whatever. But when it comes to like interpersonal relationships and declarations of previous lovers and stuff like that, that's, Kaneda had the reaction of just like him face planting on the desk. And I guess Ogata was really fascinated and impressed by Emma's personality, because he mentions it twice.
I mean, yeah, he mentioned it before too, because he doesn't know like any English, so he caught none of their conversation.
Right.
When she first showed up.
Yeah. And I think we all know what personality I'm talking about. Not her actual personality, it's her personality. So,
Which, once again, like Kanata points out, she's not even that big chested for a European. It's just a thing of, once again, Asians typically are a lot smaller chested than Europeans.
Right. But either way, it's just one of those things. If you're a journalist, give our man a break here and just go talk to him before you put that out there for everybody to hear. So, either way, this was another solid episode. We got some of these wide-angle shots of the area. That was, but yeah, another solid episode. I think Emma's going to be top 5, like she said she was shooting for. And based on the next episode title, I will be interested to see if Beckenbauer does not qualify first. That'd be actually kind of interesting. And potentially...
I don't think he will.
Potentially necessary to further his character development of actually having feelings.
Yeah, I don't think he will. I think it'll be a mixture of, once again, he doesn't really take qualifying very seriously. Sawatari took this qualifier very seriously. And Beckenbauer, just in general, is kind of in his own head right now about the fact that he's actually having to kind of try this season.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with this. We got 3 episodes left, so, finish up qualifying, and then we'll probably have 2 full episodes of a race. I don't think they're going to finish the race in these 3 episodes because that's usually not their track record. But who knows? Maybe they will. Who knows?
Yeah, usually
we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
Usually each race is at least 4 episodes. You know what I mean?
Well, it's just usually we start the race, end the season on a cliffhanger, and then pick up the next season in the middle of the race.
Yep. So either way, good job. And if you guys want to see my, we had a little discussion about the difference between Initial D and MF Ghost in the timer reaction over on Patreon. Completely free. I'm charged for that. point of having a bunch of people. So just go check it out on Patreon. The link to that video is down there. But we do talk about the comparisons to Initial D and a certain thing that I read about during the week. So I think that would be a good listen for anybody who wants to hear about that kind of thing. It's a very relevant topic to this. So go check that out on Patreon if you are interested in that discussion, because I don't want to rehash it. So anyway, yeah, bravo, well done. So you got anything else for this one, Age?
Emma's age. We got Emma's age in this one, which we had that whole thing before of her like talking up the we're adults, and like her basically making a whole big deal about her being closer to Kanata's actual age. But once again, we know Kanata's like 23-ish, and then we have Ren who's 17, and now we know Emma's only 19.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, technically they're closer age, but it's really not that big of a difference. And especially if her whole like rambling about like, well, we're adults, you're not, and stuff like that, of like, you're barely an adult.
Right. And I think, isn't Kanata supposed to be 19? And yeah, I think he is supposed to be 19, because when I looked up that thing on Kyoko, and got the spoiler that I got, that
I thought we initially established that he was like in his early 20s, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I thought he was supposed to be 19, because I know I looked at his card when I was looking up something on the wiki for Kyoko, and then I got a spoiler that we'll talk about whenever it happens, but it's not that big of a spoiler in all reality. But because I wanted to know her age, and I checked it, and she is 24. So, or she's 27, but she's slighted as 24 on the bio for whatever reason. But I thought Kanata was supposed to be 19 because of the all the stuff that they were talking about.
Okay, so he's 19, and I just got a little bit of insight as to probably why we're doing the last season as next season.
Yeah, you probably saw the same thing that I did. But once again, the thing that we're talking about really isn't a huge spoiler, but I'm obviously not going to say it. But, either way, all that stuff being said, looking forward to the race. So it will also be interesting to see who gets knocked out, which one of the drivers is knocked out, and we haven't seen Keisuke's prodigy at all in the last couple episodes, so interesting to see what's been going on with him. So
yeah, as it stands right now, it's probably either Otani or freaking. I do think it'd be interesting with the way we've been going about things if it's the brother.
Right. Which he did qualify higher than Otani, so that would be kind of difficult at that point. So we'll just have to see. But either way, ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube, beyond, hope you're watching. As always, we appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with us in the dojo for more Anime Night in the Dojo. And this was MF Ghost, Season 3, Episode 9. So have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, Victoria here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider pushing those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.